Welcome to the Retro Rollback as we continue our series looking at Britain in the 1980s. This time it's 1981. The year began with a high-profile arrest as 34-year-old Peter Sutcliffe, known as the Yorkshire Ripper, was arrested in Sheffield on the suspicion of the murder of 13 women and 7 other attacks across northern England since 1975. 4 Labour MPs, Shirley Williams, Roy Jenkins, Bill Rogers and David Owen, known at the time as the Gang of Four, announced plans to form a separate political party in January, the Social Democratic Party, or the SDP. The party was officially founded in March 1981 and ceased in 1988, when it merged into the Liberal Democrats as we know them today. Into February, and there were mass job losses as Scotland's only car manufacturing plant announced its closure. Owners Peugeot Talbot's decision to close the Linwood factory after years of serious financial losses and low production resulted in 4,800 job losses when the gates closed for the final time in May. The deindustrialisation of the UK was escalating, and on the back of the Linwood closure, the National Coal Board announced widespread pit closures, with 50 pits earmarked to close, resulting in around 50,000 job losses. Although a reprieve was given to some of these pits after union negotiations. In what was a pretty depressing start to the year, there was a glimmer of hope in the shape of a royal wedding to look forward to. On the 24th of February, Prince Charles announced his engagement to Lady Diana Spencer, with the wedding scheduled for later in the year. The next day, there was a meeting of leaders, and Margaret Thatcher travelled to Washington, D.C. to meet with newly sworn-in American President Ronald Reagan. To March, and there were no more excuses for shirking the DIY jobs around the house. Sainsbury's opened up their first home-based DIY superstore in the UK to rival B&Q, who had been in towns across the country since the late 1960s. The Troubles in Ireland were at the forefront of the news in 1981, and the hunger strikes were the main story in March, a showdown between the prisoners and the Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Hunger striker Bobby Sands was elected as a Member of Parliament during the strike, promoting media interest from around the world. The strike was eventually called off after 10 prisoners had starved themselves to death, including Sands, whose funeral was attended by 100,000 people. 1981 was the year where owning a home computer became far more accessible, as Sinclair launched the ZX81, a basic home computer manufactured by Timex in their factory in Dundee. The ZX81 boasted 1 kilobit of memory and an 8-bit processor with a cassette deck to load games and software, and all for the price tag of under £80, making it extremely popular with over 1.5 million units sold worldwide. On TV, there was a changing of the guards in one of the UK's most popular programmes. After 7 years playing the title role, Tom Baker left Doctor Who to be replaced by Peter Davison in the final episode of Logopolis. Baker had been the longest-running Doctor on the series. On the 29th of March, London saw a new event that was to carry on and grow throughout the years. Athletes and amateur runners alike took to the streets of the capital to compete in the very first London Marathon. Nearly 8,000 runners started the race, with just over 6,000 crossing the finishing line. March ended with the cinema release of one of the most iconic British films of all time, the story of athletes Eric Liddell and Harold Abrams in Chariots of Fire. The film won many awards, including Best Original Score for Vangelis' hit theme tune. 1981 is known for the inner-city riots that broke out across the country, and April began with some of the most notable. More than 300 people, most of them police officers, were injured, and extensive damage caused to property in the Brixton riots. On a lighter note, April the 4th saw us glued to the Eurovision Song Contest to see if Bucks Fizz could give Great Britain its first win since the Brotherhood of Man in 1976. And they delivered. The catchy tune Making Your Mind Up combined a synchronised dance routine and gimmick of the Velcro skirts, proving to be a winning combination. although some say it was the skirts that turned the judges' heads more than the song. Snooker was gaining popularity as a televised sport in the early 1980s, and there was a new kid on the block who was about to dominate the sport for many years to come. 23-year-old Steve Davis took to the table in the final against Doug Mountjoy of Wales, winning 18-12 to take the first of his 6 world titles. Into May, and Andrew Lloyd Webber unleashed his next smash hit musical on London's West End. Cats was based on the 1939 poetry collection Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats by T.S. Eliot, and has since become one of the longest-running shows in musical theatre history. To football, and Liverpool won the European Cup for the 3rd time in May by defeating Real Madrid by a 0-0 in the final at Parc des Princes in Paris, Alan Kennedy scoring the only goal of the game. Domestically, it was Aston Villa who ran out league champions, with Ipswich and West Brom putting up a decent title challenge. Norwich, Leicester and Crystal Palace were this season's fall guys. In Scotland, Celtic were comfortable league winners. Kilmarnock and Hearts faced relegation. We're halfway through the year, so let's take a break from the news and head off to the shops. Unemployment was high and money was tight in 1981, and those facts weren't lost on retailers in their advertising campaigns. Let's start at C&A, where they were focusing on the best quality for the lowest prices. A new stylish jacket from $15.99. Meanwhile, furniture retailer MFI made direct reference to the hard times in their adverts, where you could get a full wall of bedroom furniture for £56.95. They were even urging you to buy before budget day. Meanwhile, the Co-op had special offers on Electrolux goods, with washing machines from $239.95 and new vacuum cleaners from $49.95. Back to the news, and more riots ensued across the country. The focus this time on Liverpool, where Toxteth saw the first ever use of CS gas by a police force. Unrest continued elsewhere in July, with disturbances in many cities across England. Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher announced that police would be able to use rubber bullets, water cannons and armoured vehicles to bring the riots under control. British Leyland brought an end to the manufacture of one of their longest-running models. The Austin Maxi bowed out as Leyland prepared for their newest model to replace it, the Maestro, which launched 2 years later. July also saw the official opening of what was at the time the longest suspension bridge in the world, the Humber Bridge, linking the East Riding of Yorkshire with North Lincolnshire, and was officially opened by Her Majesty the Queen on the 17th of the month. But I wondered if she paid her toll charge. There were changes to our communications as well, and a new brand, as the post office was officially separated from the telephone network, and so the British Telecom brand was officially launched. And Busby had plenty to say about it.
Blackburn 19, Berwick 19.
A 3-minute long-distance cheap rate call, dial direct. Cost less than 19p.
Time to get your Union Jack bunting up and get that street party organised, because we had a royal wedding to celebrate. And on the 29th of July, the country almost came to a halt, and street parties and celebrations were in full flow as Prince Charles and Lady Diana Spencer tied the knot at St Paul's Cathedral. The great and good gathered for one of the most watched events in British history. In fact, over 30 million people tuned in to watch the event on TV. Not much work was done that day. To August, and it was a battle of the fastest men in athletics. Steve Ovett and Sebastian Coe were both on top form in 1981, with Ovett setting the mile record time of 3:48.40 in West Germany, quickly followed by Coe, who broke the record again in Brussels. A record that was to stand until it was broken again by Steve Cram in 1985. Now September saw a change to the way we filled up our cars. From the first of the month, we no longer filled up by the gallon, but by the litre. A move that many saw as an opportunity for the government to disguise increasing fuel prices. As if they would do a thing like that. Grenham Common Women's Peace Camp was set up in 1981 by a Welsh group called Women for Life on Earth, who had walked from Cardiff to RAF Brenham Common to protest at plans to site US nuclear missiles there. The camp was to remain until the year 2000 and was a scene of many memorable protests and incidents over the years. On that very same day, the first episode of long-running and iconic sitcom Only Fools and Horses was broadcast on BBC One. The first episode, Big Brother, was something of a ratings failure, as was the whole first series, and it was no real surprise with this awful theme tune. It's no wonder they changed it. Another TV debut that was to become a ratings winner was a bit more innocent.
Postman Pat, and his black and white cat.
Postman Pat, complete with Jess, his black and white cat, came to our screens for the first time and quickly won the hearts of the nation's children. The concept ran right into the 2010s. September ended in sadness as Liverpool Football Club lost its legendary manager Bill Shankly after suffering a heart attack at the age of 68. Bill led the Anfield side from 1959 to 1974 and was considered in world football as one of the best managers of all time. More job losses were announced in October when British Leyland closed 3 of its manufacturing plants. Factories in Coventry, Hemel Hempstead and Speke in Liverpool all fell silent, resulting in over 3,000 job losses. In November, England qualified for the 1982 World Cup with a 1-0 win over Hungary at Wembley. Ipswich Town's Paul Mariner scored the only goal of the game to send England to their first World Cup since 1970. After what was a pretty dismal year, we were all looking forward to a bright Christmas. And it's fair to say that Woolworths stepped up to the plate with this infectious Christmas TV advert. And that wraps up 1981 in the UK. Don't forget to pop your comments below and tell us your memories of that year. It'd be great to hear from you and always good to hear what you were doing back in our featured years. If indeed, of course, you were actually born back then. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel as well for more updates on when we post brand new videos and help get the channel out to more people so they can enjoy all the best of years gone by as well. If you want to continue watching the videos, then there's plenty on screen to pick and choose from just now. Otherwise, I'll see you again on the next one.